With the moon just being past its first quarter, it's a good time to check out what equipment you've got and see what you can get. Here we are, and it's about what, 20 past 9. It's June, first week of June. So the equipment we've got is the Conus, and what I've done is I've put the Meade LPI, which is there, onto basically, which is a binocular lens. If I take it through from the front here as a spotter, I have another spotter next to it and the main telescope here. Now I've used a little eyepiece to make sure I'm level with it, collimated properly, and there's also the actual spotter for the scope here, and I've worked out that if I have the moon on the crosshairs, which is towards the bottom of the crosshairs of this spotter, then I'll be able to see the moon. And what I've done is I've used a program called SharpCap, and this is an XP laptop. Now the focus on this, okay, so it's not fantastic. The point is, I will have a look later on this gibbous moon. It's a waxing gibbous moon, whether or not I can capture any stars on it. But at the moment the contrast settings I've got, as you can see checked on the box here on SharpCap, they're here, and just trying to focus in on them really. But it gives you frame rates and frame choices. In some ways I find this a bit better than using the LPI one, because on SharpCap you can individually adjust your frame division, your camera control and things like that. But it's just nice to be able to see the moon on the screen, and the idea is to take the strain off you having to look up at an object in the sky such as this. And you can see some greater detail here. I'll put it on the big scope in a minute, but it's much harder to find to do that. Okay, so the idea behind having a short focal length for these webcams or something like the Meade LPI is because you can actually see the object much more easily, and that means you can actually see more what is in the sky. And I'll see how long it takes, because apparently you can do 15-second exposures with this, and I know I've shown you pictures I've taken with other cameras, Camedias, etc. But what I want to see is what these little webcams can do on a longer exposure. But on the moon, we'll just watch that for now. Okay, and although as you can see, that's probably about as sharp as I can get on the focus. On something which is a bit, a longer focal length, I'm going to get much more greater detail. But for me, it's just be using it as a spotter, so that the idea was to see a larger area of the sky. And if the moon occupies half a degree of the sky, that's telling me that this screen would probably get at least 4 moon widths across, maybe 3 up, so that it's got to be over 2 degrees across and 1.5. So I'm looking at 2.2 degrees by 3 degrees of sky, so that's a lot larger than you can see with anything else, and that's what you want if you want to have a look at stars, and that's what I'm going to have a look at later. But the focus is important. If I've got it focused on this, it means I can see a larger area at night time of sky. Probably best seen on the auto setting, and the auto setting shows that I'm doing 15 frames a second for this gibbous moon, and you can actually see, I'm not tracking it at the moment, I'm just letting it drift. But because I'm only using a short focal length spotter, which is tied to my main scope, I'm able to see this without too much, without it moving too quickly. But I will show you on a longer focal length. So that's showing it as being 15 frames a second. I've allowed the contrast and the brightness to be set. The brightness is on about 120, the contrast is on about 1000. I could change the brightness and contrast to make it look as if it appeared to be night time, and it's slightly flickery, but the point is this is a spotter, and I'm able to see some detail, the mare. And if I was to look in the sky, then you can see how small it occupies in my main it's a video camera, and that's what I'm sort of looking at when I'm looking at it through the spotter on the XPI. And the good thing about having XP, I'll show this on wide, is that it's compatible with the Meade LPI, and it's fairly sort of a low-tech setting of looking at things. This is what I worked on the white balance, took it off auto, and you get a much more accurate representation of what's going on in the blue sky up there. I worked on the saturation, brought it up a bit as well, and the hue's fairly high and the brightness medium level, and to me it's a more realistic representation in colour of the lunar surface as seen from Earth. Okay, the beauty of working with using some colour on your webcam means that you get to see lunar detail. It sort of flickers on the contrast then, but then the light itself is changing intensely as the sun is setting, and you can get to see the mare and also some crater detail. And this is, again, as I say, just using a binocular objective, but because these webcams have such short focal lengths, it's best to use a short focal length spotter piggyback to your main scope. Even with a simple setup like this, you're able to see quite a lot of detail, and also you don't have to keep moving the scope and turn the motor on. I mean, you can do that, you can have the 9-volt battery going and track it, but for me the fun is actually finding the object and then getting your settings right. This setting, I've put the brightness about 88, the contrast is on 1000, the hue is on 354, saturation 1157, sharpness 701, gamma 754, white balance is right down, so I'm getting natural sky colours, and the exposure I put on tells me at the bottom what that is at the bottom of the XP. It tells me that I'm doing 2.3 frames a second, and it shows me what I'm processing. But I'm not actually taking any pictures at the moment. I could take some pictures of this, actually using the PC to do so as a snapshot, so I'll try that next. I'm taking some single frames now, so I'm basically go to Sharpcut configure and I'm just take a picture here, and we'll see where the frames end up. So basically I'm single frame, and it's the sequence length is just 1, it says. I'll try again, smart capture. The sequence length, I presume, is how many seconds it takes. Video sequence 4, start. That's it. Shows you what's going on here. There you go, and there's the moon drifting down there. So we'll have a look and see what we've got in a second, shall we? And frame. Right, as it drifts by. Right, so I'm not quite sure where these files go, so I'll have a look at my start capture. It says here, right, okay, let's cancel that. File, open my capture folder and see what we've got, shall we? Right, well, there seems to be some capture things here in my capture folder. We're looking for something from, when is it? June? 8th of June? Yeah. Right, let's have a look at something there. A text document or something, I don't know. It's like settings, isn't it? 8th of June, hang on. There's some Paint Shop Pro image apparently, but doesn't like that because it's paint. Okay, you can turn it off. One of the nice things is if you take single frame shots of something bright, such as the moon, using this very simple gear, if you just show here, binocular, this one is quite a short focal length binocular, and you've got the LPI here. This is, I've used a prism at the end of this. That's so I can get eye relief easily, so I can actually use an eyepiece to look through there, find the centre, and then put this in. And here we have on the screen here a single frame shot. I'll bring it down myself so you can see it a bit better as well. Okay. And considering that's just one single frame taken using this simple binocular, using the LPI, that's the whole frame there. So I would say the whole frame, as I say, covers at least, say, 2 degrees on one side and about 1.5 degrees on the other side. So you've got plenty of sky to see. The other thing you can do is with the camera, you can turn the camera around. If the camera's around this way, so you're feeling coming the camera this way and you're looking up into the sky, you will actually see the object object as is in the sky and not upside down. I mean, here I've obviously got to work a little bit on things like, you know, saturation and gamma and sharpness. It's sort of a very psychedelic looking moon at the moment, but it's quite stress-free because, as I say, if you're not looking on with the main scope and you're just using a spotter, you can still use your main scope as well for looking at your own view, and you can use this as a spotter. But as I say, tonight I'm going to have a look and see whether or not the LPI will pick up stars. And obviously at the moment all we've got at the moment is blue sky and birds, basically swallows, etc., just flying around, as you can see. I'm going to lastly see if okay, so as it's drifting away from view, as the sun's setting, it's getting brighter and brighter, and the LPI is becoming quite overexposed with the moon now. And I think earlier on I was getting better views of the Mare and, you know, crater rays, but I'm still getting the terminator edge here is still quite clear. It's difficult because it's such a very bright object, but the beauty of it is if I bring it back to Jane now from the scope here, I can actually easily move it back into view on this old XP. But the thing with the Meade is it only works on Windows XP.